Hey guys, what's up? It's Greg with Find Your Film. For this installment, I have an interview with Mark Scott Zicree, the filmmaker, writer, producer behind Space Command Redemption. He also collaborates with his wife, Elaine Zicree. They are the masterminds behind this immersive series, which they have spent years making. So this is a whole entire world. Mark Scott Zicree calls it his life's work, and that's saying a lot because this sci-fi writer, producer, and director, his credits include Star Trek: The Next Generation, Babylon 5, Deep Space Nine, and Sliders, among others. Okay, so that's just a walking, just a couple of credits that have gone on through his career. He is a very popular sci-fi writer, filmmaker, producer. He has his own, just a network of people who love his work. You can catch his stuff on the YouTube channel, Mr. Sci-Fi. Selfishly for me, he is also the writer behind The Twilight Zone Companion. I also talked to him in this interview about his own dealings with the late Rod Serling and the Rod Serling estate, and why The Twilight Zone Companion, which I actually remembered back in the early 90s or late 80s. I don't know when the first edition came out around that time, but the third edition of Zicree's The Twilight Zone Companion, which I recently purchased, it came out as recently and it was updated as recently as 2018. And he mentions why, if you are a Twilight Zone enthusiast, why it's worth getting the third edition of the Twilight Zone Companion. He also talks about why Space Command is his life's work. Specifically, Space Command Redemption is out on digital right now. I will have a link where you can get it. My apologies, however, because this actual interview with Mark Scott Zicree was on some weekend, I think early July 4th weekend, and it completely slipped my mind. So many interviews. I'm not making excuses, but this was me being an idiot for not actually releasing this Mark Scott Zicree interview on the Find Your Film podcast feed much, much sooner. At least I should have done it 3 months ago. So there are stuff that is actually dated. For example, he mentions towards the end of the interview a Kickstarter campaign, which it's already finished. It reached its 50,000 pledge goal. I think I checked online, it's over 51,000. So it was a successful Kickstarter campaign. That said, if you follow him on Mr. Sci-Fi YouTube, he does give quite a lot of updates on his life and stuff that he's really into and what's going on with Space Command. So you can reach him through that channel and subscribe to his YouTube channel. Very interesting person. And I'm glad he gave me over 25 minutes of his time to talk about his career, his relationship with and working relationship with his wife, Elaine. Also, regarding Space Command, here are some of the people who star, and he also mentions this in the interview, just a few people who star in Space Command Redemption. Doug Jones, Nichelle Nichols, Robert Picardo, the late Mira Furlan, Bill Mumy, Bruce Boxleitner. So some really great people are part of Space Command Redemption. Again, it's available on digital, and he has a lot of stuff going on. Go check out his YouTube channel for more stuff. And yeah, I really love that he's giving so many talented actors just different opportunities with this pretty much DIY sci-fi epic that he and Elaine and the cast and crew have been working for years. And he's his own boss. So it's great to see Zicree just create this entire universe with Space Command. So tell me what you think if you see it. Hopefully you enjoy this interview. Again, my apologies to Mark Scott Zicree. It took me over 3 months to release this interview. But again, I am a huge Twilight Zone fan. I just want to thank him for the Twilight Zone Companion. If you don't have it and you're not a Twilight Zone and you're a Twilight Zone fan, you need to get it because it's a great, great book. And I ordered it from Amazon. I'm going to put a link on the show notes as well, along with its Space Command Redemption links, but really worth it as far as the Twilight Zone Companion goes. And Space Command Redemption, I've watched a little bit of it. I haven't watched the entire thing, but if you are a fan of his work, his previous work, this stuff should be right up your alley. And these actors, again, it's great to see them work within this entire different universe with Zicree, and who's pretty much the boss of his own domain. Some really good stuff. So again, the Kickstarter, the YouTube stuff is proof that he is building a community. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of you have heard who Mark Scott Zicree is. Hopefully you enjoy this interview. Thank you for supporting me here on the Find Your Film podcast. I will be doing a lot more Find Your Film stuff. I think starting maybe the next several weeks because I have a lot of interviews to share with you guys. All right, guys, thanks again for your support on this podcast. Most importantly, if you don't know him, look up Mark Scott Zicree, and hopefully you'll be turned on to his work. The Twilight Zone stuff, Companion is amazing. Space Command, specifically Space Command Redemption, is very interesting as well. And just his world is interesting. So I'm going to be really, the next time he does a Kickstarter, I will be supporting. All right, guys, take care. Talk soon. And if you have any questions, email me at info@findyourfilms.com or join the Cinematics Facebook group, which is run by me and my Cinematics, not my Cinematic, and my fellow Cinematics co-hosts, Bruce Berkey and Eric Holmes. Thanks, guys. Okay, bye. I'm here with Mark Scott Zicree, the filmmaker, writer, director, producer, all everything, along with Elaine
Yeah.
Zicree of, well, Space Command. It says Space Command Redemption, but you have the shirt with that says Space Command.
Yes.
And just
And
doing,
so I can
yes.
explain. Space Command is the first season of Space Command is 12 hours, but it's divided up into 2-hour stories that form a larger arc over the course of the season. So each 2-hour story has its own title. And so the first 2-hour story is entitled Redemption. The next one is Forgiveness. We did a bonus episode during the pandemic called Ripple Effect. We're about to start shooting Great Solar War, which is the next one. Then Empire, and then Mousetrap. That makes the season. So it's so each one has its own title. So the first 2 hours is Redemption, and that's what people can rent and buy now. It's out now.
Well, what's interesting, I've been listening to some of your past podcast interviews, and you were talking about one of the greatest jobs of a writer is to write the fullest expression of himself or herself.
Yeah.
That said, it feels maybe I'm overstepping, but Space Command is sort of a magnum opus for you. How is it the big expression of who you are as a person?
Well, it's the thing that's wonderful is I've been very lucky in my career. 95% of the scripts I've written have gotten made because I worked in TV, and the people I worked for and the network executives appreciated my abilities. So what I wrote is what got on the air. That said, though, now, thanks to my fan base who's basically financed me, Elaine and I write it, produce it, direct it. We can cast whoever we want. I mean, literally, it's as easy as me meeting someone and saying, so Elaine and I write it, produce it, direct it. We can cast whoever we want. It's very casual. There's no one above me in the food chain saying, "Oh, put in a cute kid or a stupid robot or something." It's like, I mean, we have robots, we have kids in it, but they're not dumb. Because we've all seen science fiction shows that kind of go south, and it's like, well, why did that start out so well? Why did it go so badly? And it's often because of meddling and so forth. So yes, this is the culmination of everything I've built my career toward.
Well, with Space Command Studios, your studios, and your years as a producer, how did that prepare you as far as, look, people can actually buy shares, they can help you via Kickstarter. That
Yes.
all that said, the financial stuff is really great, but you as a producer, you and Elaine have to really figure out how to dole things out. Did your
Yes,
early producing career help you? How did that
very
help you?
much
Or maybe
so.
not. Yeah.
Well, no, it did very much so. And so did when I was in my early 20s, I wrote a book called The Twilight Zone Companion. And that's where I got to study how the Twilight Zone got made and how it was built step by step by Rod Serling and by the producers who came aboard, and how it was a collaborative effort between Rod and the actors and the directors and the producers and everyone. And then, of course, I started, when I was 10, the original Star Trek came out, and that was hugely influential on my life because I met Nichelle Nichols when I was 10, and I went on the set of the original Star Trek, and then I read The Making of Star Trek when I was 13, and that was the first book I'd ever read about how a TV show gets made. And so from all of this, and from writing hundreds of hours of network TV, and I saw how you build this mechanism that's a television show, but also, see, it's a fascinating thing because it's a mechanism, and it costs money, and there's nuts and bolts of production, but it's all to serve saying something meaningful. And that's additionally what I learned from Rod Serling and from Harlan Ellison and Ted Sturgeon and all these great writers who were writing for Twilight Zone and Star Trek, and also writing the books and the short stories that I grew up reading. So I saw that it's all in service of the art, but you have to know what you're doing in terms of the dimes and pennies and dollars and millions of dollars. But I realized that by selling shares for $7,500 each, by doing Kickstarter campaigns, the fan base could finance it. And because I have my own studio, I can do I can make high quality shows for much less than the studios and networks do because there's so much waste on their side of the equation. So we can make shows. For instance, the first 2 hours of Space Command had 1,900 visual effects shots. That's crazy. That's insane. That's more than Star Wars, and yet we were able to pull it off. And it just is. The big change is the big difference is that you have to build everything from the ground up. And but fortunately, I love doing that, and so it's a gift. It's a joy.
With the Space Command universe, also, can you speak to the fact that your ensemble is just top notch, and rest in peace, Mira
Yes,
Furlan, and just Nichelle Nichols,
yes.
Doug Jones, how, just as just lifelong collaborators with them, how great is it
Yes.
to actually give them a spotlight and to tell people like us, hey, I'm actually bringing on people, Barbara Bain, who are so talented
I
and
know.
I
It's
have a
amazing.
platform. Yeah, so it must
And
mean a
and
lot
this
to you.
and this again is where not having a network or a studio above me saying you can or you can't do this, because I would say Barbara Bain and they would say who, or I would say Doug Jones before Doug starred in, Discovery. It was like they wouldn't have known who he was. I couldn't have gotten that cast approved. Billy Mumy and Mira and Bruce Boxleitner and all these different people. It was like, you know, but so it's a dream come true. And for instance, as I mentioned, I met Nichelle Nichols when I was 10, and she gave me a signed photo of herself and scripts from Star Trek that were her copies of the original scripts. And this is when the show's on the air. And so to 50 years later, go to her house and shoot a scene in Space Command with her and bring the scrapbook that I had when I was 10 years old, where I put all that stuff in the scrapbook and sit with her and flip through that scrapbook and have her sign that scrapbook to me. It was a dream come true, of course. And with Doug, it's so natural and just as a matter of course. Like for instance with Mira, and Bill Mumy, I met Bill Mumy when I was 7 when Lost in Space was on the air, and then, I was sick at home one day and I just started calling. I got out the phone book, the big, it was phone directory that they used to have for every number in the city. I started calling the stars of Lost in Space, and most of the people were just the same name, but not the person. There was one Mummy in the phone book. It was his dad. And I was homesick. I was in my pajamas. I was 7 years old. I was a latchkey kid. And so Bill Mummy's mother answered the phone. And I said, "Is Billy there?" Bill Mummy came to the phone. I was so nervous all I could do was stammer out, "Will you be my friend?" and hang up. But then later, when my mom got home, we called back. And when I was well again, when I was over my cold, we went to Bill's house. We traded comic books. So I've known him since I was 7. Then we worked together on Babylon 5. I interviewed him for The Twilight Zone Companion. And it was just very organic, very natural, the flow of this. And so it's wonderful. And so getting Nichelle Nichols or Armin Shimmerman's coming up, and Bob Picardo will be playing Armin Shimmerman's grandfather because it's multi-generational, and just super fun, super fun.
I can't complain anymore because over the years, I would say Robert Picardo needs to be in more movies and projects, and
Yes.
I just have to watch Space Command.
Yes. Yes,
So,
exactly. Because these people are so wonderful and so underutilized. It's amazing. And so I'll meet them. And but the main trick is when I meet them, I want to write a role that's good for them. That isn't just them saying some line and gone. Because sometimes you see in certain things where they'll have a role, but it won't be meaningful. And so what I'm actually doing is creating an ensemble. Space Command is part of something I'm creating called the Showrunners Network, where it's a slate of 6 series. And so they're in all of the different shows that I'm doing, and we're going to be starting to shoot those pilots within the year. And I'm co-creating that with the creators of The Expanse and Farscape and so forth, and a new Rod Serling series. So there's a lot coming in the future,
uh,
a
did
lot
you
of cool
just
stuff.
did you just say new Rod Serling series? Because you were mentioning
Yes,
something about stuff that he recorded I
yes,
mean, the past, and that might not have been produced.
yeah.
What can you tell us about what you listen to? Are they
Ah.
of quality? Are you excited
Yes,
about that?
yes. I'm in conversations with Sterling family and with their representative, and of course I've known the daughters, Jody and Ann, since I was in my 20s, early 20s, when I was writing the book and going to Rod's house all the time. It was 2 years after Rod's death that I started working on the book, and so the basic thing is from about 1957 on, Rod dictated all of his scripts and into a recorder, and then his secretary would type them up and he'd make hand corrections and so forth. But he dictated letters, he dictated shopping lists, he dictated speeches, everything. And Rod had that incredibly distinct way of speaking. And so it was thought that all of those recordings were lost. And they recently found 1,000 of them, 1,000 hours of recordings of Rod Serling dictating scripts, dictating everything. And my idea was to take those recordings and have Rod narrate new episodes that would be from scripts he wrote that never got made, from scripts he wrote that were made in the early years of television where no one has seen them in, since the 50s. And plus also bring in other writers, scripts that were written by the other writers on Twilight Zone, scripts that may have been written by the younger generation like Neil Gaiman, those kind of guys. And there's a script I wrote for Twilight Zone when they brought it back to CBS that was pulled by the censors 1 week before it started filming. So there's a Katie Sackhoff expressed interest in starring in that from Battlestar Galactica. So it's now it's not a done deal yet, but it's something that I'm very excited about, and I hope the girls will agree and we can make it happen. But I think it will happen.
Well, you mentioned Showrunners Network, and you also mentioned when you're working with people creatively, one thing that you do not like are toxic notes. Since I'm not in the know, what is the difference between a toxic note and a very creative note, which you
Yes.
can keep the conversation and the creation going? Because
Yeah.
I don't know what that fine line is. You do.
Yes. Well, see, here's the thing of it. I've been very lucky. People always talk about network and studio executives as being idiots or being just caring about the dollar and the costs and so forth. Most of the network executives and studio executives I dealt with were very intelligent. They were very passionate. They wanted to create good television. And so I didn't get a lot of toxic notes, but because they're writing the checks, you can't ignore their notes. And so and also you can't say which executive is going to oversee you. That's the luck of the draw. And sometimes they can fire somebody and they can bring someone new in and that person can be an idiot. So or it could be anyone in the food chain. Anyone who's above you in the food chain, you have to listen to their notes. And so if they say well, it's like they can say anything. They can say, "Well, put a circus in it. We have a clown that we want to focus in our sweeps weeks, and they can say anything. It can be totally insane, and then you have to you have to figure out, okay, how can I make this work? How can I make this work? Because your commitment is to make every draft better than the previous one, no matter what the notes are, and so it takes a lot of cleverness and it takes a lot of energy, but more than that. The reason I did Space Command, finance Space Command the way I have, is because over decades, I was seeing some of the greatest pilots by some of our favorite showrunners not getting picked up as series. This happened with George R. R. Martin. He did a great pilot called Doorways that was about characters jumping from parallel Earth to parallel Earth. It was made the same. The pilot was filmed the same year as Sliders pilot was, and I liked it better than Sliders. And I'm speaking as a writer producer from the fourth season of Sliders. But that was what caused George to leave Hollywood, and he said, "Well, I'm going to just write a book that's so big it would never be a TV series," and that was Game of Thrones. But we never got to see Doorways, and Ron Moore did a series of pilots before Battlestar Galactica, and these are years of wasted effort. Where what I'm trying really to do is have the writers have the same kind of freedom of expression that our favorite science fiction novelists have. Like with a guy like Ray Bradbury or any of our favorite writers in the genre, we can see from book to book to book, they're doing the stories that they're passionate about. They're doing the stories that are meaningful to them. And so you can see an arc of a career because they have creative freedom. And I want to give showrunners, the same power in television.
Mark, you mentioned something about passion and work ethic, and just
Yeah,
a very slight detour for a single second.
sure.
I decided to actually purchase on Amazon the Twilight Zone companion. I was expecting a dog-eared copy, and I would have been fine with it, but here we go. This
That's the new one.
is this is the third edition, I believe,
Yes,
2018,
yes,
and it
yes.
is feels like it just came right off the presses.
It did.
And can you just talk about you could have,
Yes,
it could have been
yes.
you still put a lot of care into it. The
Oh,
dumb
yeah,
question is why, and hats off to you for just making this so new. And I'm
sure.
expecting even more editions considering who you are
Yeah,
as a person.
yeah.
Where does that come? Where does that come from?
Here's what it was. Anyone who's bought the first edition of the Twilight Zone Companion or the second edition, they don't have the complete book because this one has more than 100 pages of extra material. It's got 500 different photographs, new photographs. It's also got links to audio and video rarities. And the reason I did the book, the update on it, was because people kept telling me stories from their encounters with Rod Serling or their experiences on the Twilight Zone. For instance, my friend Doug Hayes, who was one of the great directors on the Twilight Zone. He did The Howling Man and The After Hours and The Invaders, the one with Agnes Moorehead and the little astronaut guys. And he directed Eye of the Beholder, one of the great episodes. It's a woman with her head in bandages waiting to see if she's been made to look normal. Otherwise, she'll be sent off to a reservation. And Doug told me after the book came out that when they were shooting it, they realized they were running short. They were going to run short and it had hit a certain runtime, and Rod was not available. He was out of town, and this is before you had the internet, before you had, instantaneous communication. And so Doug, who himself was a writer, wrote an extra scene for that script that was in Rod Serling's style, and they shot it. So if you ever see that episode, there's a scene in sort of a break room where they're smoking a cigarette, the nurse and the doctor, and they're talking about, I've seen under the bandages, her face is a human face. Doug wrote that. And so when Serling came back, they screened the cut for him, and Doug was standing in the back of the screening room just sweating bullets. And at the end of it, Rod just turned to him and said, "Nice scene." And so, but that wasn't in the book because Doug told me after I wrote the book, and I said to Doug, "Why did you tell me that?" And so, things like that. And so I wanted to include what I'd learned since. And so I'm very happy with the new edition. And also I produced the Twilight Zone Blu-ray set, and we did 52 audio commentaries with the writers and the directors and the producers, and also with some of the new brilliant writers like Neil Gaiman or the creator of Mad Men, the people who were inspired by Rod Serling and by the Twilight Zone. So eventually there's 102 episodes, 104 episodes left for me to do commentaries on, and eventually I'll do those because I have all that stuff in my head.
That is amazing. That kind of care that you put into the Twilight Zone universe, you're putting also into your universe with Space Command. So when people go out and they can purchase it on digital, but
Yes.
also is there physical media at box
Yes.
sets work?
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
speak to that? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Space Command, the series.com is our website, and you can buy the Blu-ray, you can buy the DVD of Space Command Forgiveness, and there's a box set that we're working on, which will include. There's a prequel that I wrote that we recorded as an audio play, and we're also doing as a graphic novel, and we're combining them into what's called an animatic, which is an animated storyboard, and it has all of our stars. It's got Bill Mumy and Doug Jones and Mira Furlan before her passing, and Michael Harney from Orange Is the New Black, and Ethan McDowell. Everybody's in it, and Bob Picardo. And so we have almost finished the graphic novel now. So that will be in the box set, all of the animatic. And then during the pandemic, we did a bonus 2-hour episode called Ripple Effect. That'll be in the box set. And then the episode we're now in post-production on, Forgiveness, that'll be in the box set as well. So that's all going to be, I think, within the year. So that'll be available as well as physical media and also as items that you can rent online.
Mark, the cliche is a lot of writers, they like to stay in their rooms and write, and the outside world it's a cliche.
Yeah. Those are my friends who are novelists, and they're very pale people, and they're kind of, they live in their head and they don't go out much. Yeah, and I've written novels successfully, and I certainly have the skill to do that, but that's not my dream of heaven. I would go absolutely crazy. First of all, I'm the first generation of television kids. I grew up with TV, and so my earliest memories are watching, television like Mickey Mouse Club and stuff like that when I was really little, and so I've always loved television. It's my favorite art form. It combines all of the arts. It combines writing and acting and music and visual design and all of it, and it reaches millions of people. So I love television. That's my form, and I love collaboration.
Just being, you have an instant bond with people who adore your work, and a lot of people like to not deal with the public or people who do, and that kind of stuff. But you actually have a natural facility. Was that always in you, that kind of communication, which has led you to have this community and with that channel and your work?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I love collaboration. So I view the actors and everyone I'm working with, the art department, everyone. I mean, one of my friends is Ian McCaig. He designed Darth Maul and Queen Amidala, and incredible concept artist. And so he's designing the new uniform for Jack Captain Kemmer is going to be fleet commander in the episode we're filming now, Great Solar War. So we're designing a new uniform for him, and I love all that collaboration. But more than that, I love collaborating. I love communicating with and meeting my audience. I'm going to be at Comic-Con. We're going to have a screening and a panel and a signing, and I'm going to be at the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas. And I never mind talking to people because I'm the same as they are. I got to go through the mirror, through the window glass of the television set, and like Alice in Wonderland, Alice through the looking glass. But I'm not different from them. I'm the same. I have the same enthusiasms, and I love science fiction for that reason.
What does it feel like though? Because when you were in your early 20s, you started the Twilight Zone Companion, and when
Yeah.
I'm assuming someone mentioned the name Rod Serling, your eyes would light up. Now,
Yes.
so many years later, when you talk to people and they mention your name is mentioned, their face will light up because of all the work and excellence that you've done over the years. How
Yeah.
does that make you feel when you see them in person? Do you feel that sort
Yeah.
of full circle moment in a way?
Yes, yes, yes. And I mean, it's very interesting because the generation that I came up with of writers in television we were all very ambitious. And, I mean, my circle included J. Michael Straczynski, who created Babylon 5, and there's a whole journey that I've taken with him. Of course, I know Ron Moore from Galactica and, all that because I knew all the Star Trek Next Generation guys. So we were all, our idol, our role model was Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry as well. And that was our dream to create these wonderful imaginary worlds that would influence the world, that would make the world a better place. And so many of us have had the great honor to have succeeded at that. And I'm happier now than I ever have been. I mean, I wouldn't go back to working at Universal or Paramount or any of those. I mean, it's not if I could, that no, I'm living my dream now. I've always been living my dream, but now it's even better because I'm the guy at the top of the food chain. So, and I love that. It's so fun, yeah, but it's very gratifying. Yes, I love it.
Mark, final couple questions.
Sure.
First one up is in general, what makes Elaine such a great collaborator? And you said she was a better director than you. What makes her a
Oh yeah.
better
Oh
director?
yeah. Oh
In
yeah.
a
A
way.
better person than me too. We just celebrated our 47th anniversary. So if we'd had a kid, he'd be old now. But it's I met Elaine when I was 20 and got married when I was 21, and she's the best part of every day, even still. And so she's amazingly grounded. She's amazingly compassionate. She's a wonderful writer. I mean, just the whole nine yards, just great. And so writing with her. She's always looking for what's the deeper meaning, what's the point of this story that we're telling. The Great Solar War is this big anti-war piece, but you have to tell that through the lens of the human heart, through the lens of your characters. So although you may have a big goal to basically say war, when we were fighting a war, the enemy is not the person on the other side. It's not the guy in Gaza with his family. The enemy is the concept of war itself. We have to start seeing everyone as the same humanity as we are. They're the same, and put aside the notion that this is acceptable to do these atrocities. And so that's what it's talking about, the larger view of humanity that science fiction gives us, and that the space program gives us, the idea that when we leave Earth, there's been no war fought in outer space. Well, that's good. And when you think about the Russians and everybody, the Chinese, it's such a dangerous environment in space that I think there's a natural tendency to help each other there's not enough room for nonsense because it's so easy to die up there. And but anyway, and maybe I'm an optimist, but I think that we can do better, and I think science fiction can point the way, and it certainly has with what Roddenberry did with Star Trek and with what Rod did with Twilight Zone.
My final question, is there an unlock as far as your workflow? Because you have so many projects in the fire. You're also, making things and you're also writing and you're also a big consumer, meaning you still love
Yeah.
reading and
Yeah.
learning what's the unlock for you on a daily basis to get your stuff done?
You mean when you say unlock, do you
I
mean
mean,
how do I get
getting,
it all done?
yeah,
I,
definitely.
I prioritize. Elaine and I write, we work 5 days a week minimally. We try to take the weekends off, or at least a day off. We take the evenings off if we can. And, this is obviously not when we're shooting. It's a different ball game when we're shooting. But I pace myself. I write at the top of each week, I write down what I need to do and for the coming week. And I put a star by what advances me artistically and a dollar sign by what earns money. And anything that doesn't have a star or a dollar sign on it I don't do. So that kind of weeds things out. And I try and do the most important things first. Like, for instance, right now, we've written the first 78 pages of the shooting draft of Great Solar War. We've actually started shooting the episode already. And so we have 50 more pages to write, and we're actively doing that. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a completed production draft. We've written many drafts of the full script prior to this, and then it's just nailing it all down, and we'll be shooting in August. We had to move the shoot by a few weeks just because of SAG paperwork and stuff. But on this at the same time, I'll be, doing Mr. Sci-Fi videos, or I'll be acquiring a spacesuit or a spaceship set or something I mean, for instance, the sets that we're shooting Great Solar War on, we're building a lot of stuff from scratch, but also I acquire sets and costumes and props from big budget science fiction movies and TV shows that we can then utilize with what we build fresh to give us more production value. So I've been buying sets, spaceship consoles, all that stuff for years now, just for this episode because I knew where we were heading.
And finally, after this, after purchasing Space Command Redemption, where can people find you? Your channel. There's a Kickstarter right around
Mr.
the corner as
Sci-Fi,
well.
yeah, Mr. Sci-Fi on YouTube. My Mr. Sci-Fi channel is the best way to get the lowdown on all things me. And the Kickstarter campaign starts July 9th, and so I've put out the first video talking about that. It's to shoot Great Solar War, the new episode. We're in post-production on Forgiveness, and these are all Space Command episodes. And so yeah, and people can buy shares still for $7,500 each, where they get a percentage of my producer's net profits. So they can just email me at markzicree@gmail.com if they want to buy in. I would suggest they do that sooner rather than later, because once the entire season sells, shares will not be available anymore. So there's a lot of great fun coming down the road. So lots of enjoyment soon to come.
Mark, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I've enjoyed it. So, well, we'll talk again soon, and thanks for everything. Have a great holiday weekend.
You too. Take care, Mark.
Take care. Bye.